Pretend to date her, and you'll get a promotion. That's what my boss said, like I was being handed a new project, not a human heart. I laughed at first. Me, an intern from the marketing department, fake dating the daughter of the most terrifying woman in Silicon Valley? It sounded like one of those ridiculous TikTok office dramas. Except it wasn't. It was my life now. Her name was Adrienne Carter, the only child of Valerie Carter, CEO of Novalink Technologies, a woman whose presence alone could freeze an entire boardroom. Rumor had it that she built her empire from a garage at 22 and shattered 3 glass ceilings before 30. Her daughter, though? She was the opposite of what I'd expected. The first time I met Adrienne, she was sitting on the floor of the Novalink cafeteria, barefoot, eating leftover pizza, and coding something that made 0 sense to me. She looked up at me with these calm, unreadable eyes and said, "You're the fake girlfriend, right?" Like it was the most normal sentence in the world. "Yeah," I said, trying not to trip over my own feet. "That's me. The fake one." She nodded, wiped her hands on a napkin, and smiled faintly. "Good. Let's make it believable." I didn't know then that this ridiculous assignment, this corporate charade, would lead me into the most real thing I'd ever felt. At first, everything was rehearsed. We practiced hand-holding in public. No softer. "You're gripping like you're about to arm wrestle me." We staged photos for social media. "Smile like you mean it, Ivy." We even had a fake backstory, met at a coding boot camp, fell in love over late-night ramen and debugging errors. It was all part of Valerie Carter's plan to soften her image for investors, humanize the brand. As she put it, I was just a pawn. Or so I thought. But the thing about pretending to love someone is that, after a while, you start forgetting where the act ends and your heart begins. There was a moment, I remember it vividly, when we were taking a photo for a company event. The backdrop was this giant LED sign that said "Innovation with Heart." Adrienne slipped her arm around my waist, leaned close and whispered, "You smell like coffee and panic." I laughed and so did she. And for a heartbeat, it didn't feel fake at all. We grew close, too close for two people who were supposed to be faking it. Adrienne had this way of disarming me. She never tried too hard. She didn't need to. She was honest in a world built on branding and optics. She could see through every layer I tried to hide behind. One night, after a company gala, she drove us to the Golden Gate Bridge. The city lights glimmered like scattered stars, and she sat on the hood of her car, her hair glowing in the cold moonlight. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" she asked. I blinked. "Every day. Especially lately." She smiled, sad and beautiful. "Same." It hit me then, beneath her calm, Adrienne was just as lost as I was. The daughter of a woman who ruled the tech world like an ice queen. She'd been trained to be perfect, strategic, composed, untouchable. But in that moment she looked breakable, human. And I wanted to be the one to keep her from shattering. The first kiss wasn't supposed to happen. We were at a networking event, pretending again. Cameras flashed, journalists hovered, and someone shouted, "Kiss for the press." I froze, but Adrienne didn't. She leaned in, her lips brushing mine, light as a sigh. It should have been just for show. It wasn't. Something in that kiss, the warmth, the tremble, the truth cracked open a part of me I didn't know existed. When she pulled back, I saw the same shock mirrored in her eyes. Neither of us spoke for the rest of the night. I went home and cried. Not because it felt wrong, but because it felt right, too right for something that wasn't supposed to be real. Days turned into weeks. The fake dating campaign was working. Valerie Carter's public approval had soared, and Novalink's shares were climbing. Everyone was happy except us. Adrienne started avoiding me. Meetings turned into curt emails. Lunches into polite nods. I tried to play it cool, but every message that began with "Hey partner," and ended with a period instead of a smiley felt like a punch to the chest. I missed her laugh. I missed her warmth. I missed pretending that what we had was fake. One night, unable to stand it anymore, I found myself outside her apartment, a minimalist penthouse overlooking the bay. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even know what I wanted to say. But when she opened the door, barefoot in an oversized hoodie, eyes rimmed red from crying, the words just spilled out. "Why are you shutting me out?" I asked, voice breaking. "Because this isn't supposed to hurt," she whispered. "And it does." She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the tremor in her breath. "Ivy, I don't know when I stopped pretending," she said. Maybe I never did. Maybe I wanted it to be real from the start. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat refused to work. So I did the only thing I could. I kissed her. For real this time. No cameras, no investors, no pretending. Just us. But love, real love, doesn't come without a cost. Valerie Carter found out, of course she did. She called me into her office the next morning, her voice colder than the glass walls around her. "You were hired to play a role, Miss Hart," she said. "Not to fall in love with my daughter." I tried to explain, to tell her that it wasn't part of the plan, that I hadn't meant to. But how do you explain something as irrational and all-consuming as love to someone who measures life in stock prices and press releases? She looked at me for a long time, then simply said, "You're fired." That night I packed my things. My ID badge, my notebook, the photo of Adrienne and me at the gala, her arm around me, both of us laughing like idiots. I stared at it for a long time before tucking it into my pocket. I thought I'd never see her again. But I was wrong. The days after I left Novalink felt like walking through fog, thick, cold, and endless. My inbox was empty. My phone was silent. Even my apartment seemed smaller, quieter. Every morning, I still reached for my work badge before remembering I no longer had one. It's strange how quickly something can become a habit, a routine that feels like part of who you are, and how easily it can vanish. I told myself I'd move on. I'd find another job, another distraction. But my heart refused to cooperate. It had carved a space for Adrienne and nothing seemed to fill it. Then one night she showed up at my door. It was raining, the kind of relentless San Francisco drizzle that turns the streets into mirrors. I opened the door and there she was, hair soaked, mascara smudged, clutching her phone like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "I shouldn't be here," she said, voice trembling. "Then why are you?" "Because I can't pretend anymore." Her words hit me like thunder. She stepped inside, dripping water onto the floor, eyes searching mine for something, forgiveness, maybe, or courage. "Mom knows everything," she said. "She told me to cut you off or she'd pull funding from every project I've ever worked on." I stared at her, heart pounding. "And you came here anyway?" She laughed softly, almost broken. "What's the point of building technology that connects the world if I can't even connect to the person I love?" Before I could respond, she kissed me, urgent, desperate, like she was trying to make up for every day we'd lost. And for the first time in weeks, the world made sense again. For a while we existed in secret. Adrienne moved between two lives: the dutiful daughter who attended board meetings and smiled for shareholders, and the girl who snuck into my apartment at midnight to sleep in my arms. It was dangerous, messy, and intoxicating. We'd cook pancakes at 2 a.m., laugh about office gossip, and watch the lights from the bridge flicker like stars. She'd tell me about her dreams, how she wanted to create an AI platform for mental health, how she wanted to leave Novalink and build something that mattered. "You could do it," I said one night, tracing lazy circles on her arm. "You're brilliant." She smiled faintly. "Brilliant doesn't mean free." That line haunted me. The tension with her mother grew. Valerie was the kind of woman who saw everything: the whispers in the hallways, the subtle shift in her daughter's behavior. She knew something was off. One evening, Adrienne called me from a company retreat in Napa. Her voice was quiet, shaky. "She's giving me an ultimatum," she said. "Either I take over Novalink and clean up my personal image, or she'll hand the company to her CFO. I tried to stay calm. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," she whispered. "But I can't lose you." That night I realized love wasn't enough to protect us from the world we lived in, not from power, not from control, not from fear. A few days later, Valerie invited me to lunch. The message came through a private number. Cafe Luna. 12 p.m. Don't be late. My stomach twisted as I read it. I almost didn't go. But part of me needed closure, or maybe I just wanted to prove I wasn't afraid of her. When I arrived, she was already there, immaculate as ever, her blazer sharper than her tone. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "I suppose you think this is romantic," she said, her voice as cold as marble. "The poor intern and the prodigy daughter." "I don't think anything," I replied carefully. "I just know I love her." Valerie's lips curved into a thin, humorless smile. "Love," she said, as if tasting the word and finding it sour. "Do you think love pays shareholders? Keeps investors calm? Builds a billion-dollar brand? No, I said, meeting her gaze. But it keeps your daughter alive. That made her pause. For a flicker of a moment, I saw something, a shadow of humanity behind those steel eyes. Then it was gone. She leaned forward. If you truly care for her, you'll stay away. She doesn't need your chaos. I'm not the chaos, I said quietly. You are. I left before she could respond. Adrienne didn't speak to me for 2 days after that. When she finally did, it was through a text that simply read, "We need to talk." I met her at Pier 7, where the bay wind smelled like salt and the sky bled into the horizon. She stood by the railing, her coat whipping around her, eyes wet but determined. She's cutting me off, she said. Financially, professionally, everything. I'm sorry, I whispered. She shook her head. Don't be. I knew this would happen. I just didn't think it would hurt this much. She looked at me, really looked, and I saw it, the fear, the love, the impossible choice between duty and desire. Ivy, she said softly, if I stay with you, I lose everything I've built. But if I let you go, I lose myself. The wind howled between us. I wanted to tell her I'd wait, that we'd find a way. But I could see it in her face, she was already breaking. So I did the only thing I could. I pulled her into my arms and whispered, then lose everything. Because you'll still have me. We ran. It wasn't planned. It wasn't smart. But it was real. Adrienne withdrew what money she had left, quit Novalink, and disappeared with me to a small town on the Oregon coast. We rented a tiny apartment above a bookstore that smelled like old paper and sea salt. For the first time in our lives, there were no cameras, no press, no boardrooms. Just us. We painted the walls ourselves, burned pancakes every morning, and danced barefoot in the kitchen to bad 90s love songs. Felt like freedom. One night, as the rain tapped against the windows, she turned to me and said, "You know what the weirdest thing is? I've never felt poorer, but I've never felt richer either." I laughed and kissed her forehead. Welcome to the middle class. She smiled. It's not so bad. For months we lived like that, small, quiet, happy. I found work at a local marketing agency. Adrienne started coding again, creating a prototype for her mental health platform. She called it Pulse, saying it was for anyone who's ever felt invisible. But happiness, as I learned, has a fragile expiration date. One afternoon, I came home to find Adrienne sitting by the window, staring at her laptop. The light from the screen painted her face in shades of blue and gold. "It's Mom," she said without looking up. "She's offering to fund Pulse, but only if I come back." I felt the air leave my lungs. "And if you say no?" "She'll bury me in NDAs and lawsuits. Pulse will die before it's born." Silence filled the room, heavy and cruel. "I don't want to lose this," she said finally, reaching for my hand. "I don't want to lose you." "Then don't," I whispered. "But what if loving you means I can't do what I was born to do?" Her words cut deeper than she realized. For the first time, I saw the world she'd come from pulling her back like gravity, that corporate empire, that hunger for control, that need to prove herself. And me? I was just a heartbeat outside that orbit. We didn't break up that night. We didn't even fight. But something in the air shifted, quiet, invisible, inevitable. She threw herself into Pulse, spending long hours at her desk. I pretended not to notice the way she flinched every time her phone buzzed. We still laughed, still kissed, but the warmth was thinning like sunlight behind clouds. One evening, I came home to find her gone. No note, no text. Just her laptop missing from the desk and her favorite hoodie folded neatly on the couch. I waited hours, then days. Finally, I saw an article on TechWire. Adrienne Carter returns to Novalink. Launches Pulse initiative under Carter Foundation. The photo showed her standing next to Valerie, both smiling. My chest went numb. She'd gone back. For weeks, I refused to read the article. I deleted every photo of us, buried myself in work, told everyone I was fine. But late at night, when the world was quiet, I'd replay her last words in my mind. What if loving you means I can't do what I was born to do? I wanted to hate her. I couldn't. Because deep down I knew she didn't choose power over me. She chose survival. In a world built by people like her mother, love was a luxury, not a lifeline. And still I loved her. Months passed. Seasons changed. I built a new life, smaller, humbler, but mine. Then one morning a letter arrived. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single line. Meet me where the sky touches the bridge. My heart stopped. Only one person ever said that, Adrienne. On the night we'd watched the Golden Gate shimmer under the stars. I went. The city hadn't changed, but I had. I stood by the bridge, hands trembling, until I saw her standing there in a long coat, hair shorter, eyes softer. She looked tired but free. Hi, she said. Hi, I whispered back. Neither of us moved for a moment. Then she smiled, small, real, like the first light after a storm. I left, she said. For good. Mom can have Novolink. I don't want to build her empire anymore. What about Pulse? It's mine now. Ours if you still want it. The wind carried her words between us like a prayer. I took a step closer, then another, until we were inches apart. You came back, I said. She nodded. I never really left. And this time when she kissed me, it wasn't a promise or a performance, it was home. The city glittered below us, alive with noise and neon. But in that moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. Adrienne's fingers trembled slightly as they intertwined with mine. I don't know how to make this right, she said softly. I've hurt you, I've lied to myself, and I've run away more times than I can count. I smiled faintly, though my chest ached. Then stop running. That was all it took. One sentence, one truth, and the space between us dissolved. She leaned in, her forehead against mine, breathing like someone learning how to be alive again. I love you, she whispered. I always did. Even when I didn't know how to say it. I laughed, small, shaky. You really have the worst timing, you know that? She smiled. Yeah, but maybe this time I'm right on time. We moved in together a month later, not in the Oregon Coast apartment, but in a quiet neighborhood in San Francisco, where the ocean was always close enough to hear but far enough to dream. The apartment was small, but we made it ours. Adrienne painted the walls white. I covered them in sticky notes full of campaign ideas and love quotes. Our kitchen smelled like coffee and cinnamon. She worked on Pulse again, building it from scratch without Novolink's shadow hovering over her. I joined her as the marketing lead because who better to tell the world about healing than two women who had finally learned to stop breaking. We were happy. Not the cinematic fireworks kind of happy, but the gentle, steady. We survived this kind. Still, some nights she'd wake up from dreams she couldn't explain. Her breathing quick, her fingers gripping mine like a lifeline. She's in my head, she'd whisper. Your mom. She nodded. It's like she's always watching, always waiting for me to fail. I brushed my thumb across her knuckles. Then let her watch you rise. Pulse took off faster than we expected. At first, it was just a small beta launch, a quiet corner of the internet where people could track their emotions, connect anonymously, and talk to trained AI counselors. But word spread. The platform was raw, honest, human, everything Novolink's sterile systems weren't. Tech blogs called it the future of empathy. Investors called. Universities wanted collaborations. And with every success, Adrienne stood taller. But so did Valerie Carter's shadow. One afternoon, we were sitting in a cafe downtown when Adrienne's phone buzzed. She frowned at the screen, then handed it to me. It was an email, short, sharp, familiar. Congratulations on Pulse. Let's talk. V. Carter. I looked at her. You don't owe her anything. I know, she said quietly. But maybe I owe it to myself to hear her out. A week later, we walked into the Carter Tower together. I hadn't been there since the day she fired me, and stepping inside again felt like walking into a memory I tried to forget. The marble floors still gleamed. The logo still glowed like a crown. But something about it all felt smaller now. Maybe because I wasn't the same girl anymore. Valerie was waiting in her office, all steel, glass, and precision. She didn't look surprised to see us together. Adrienne, she said coolly. I was wondering how long your rebellion would last. Adrienne smiled faintly. Long enough to build something without you. For a second, I thought I saw pride flash in Valerie's eyes, but if it was there, it vanished as quickly as it came. You built this Pulse project with her, Valerie said, nodding toward me. The woman who nearly cost you your reputation. Adrienne's hand found mine under the table. She didn't cost me anything. She gave me everything I'd been missing. The silence stretched. Then Valerie stood, walked to the window and said, You really think you can survive out there without me? Without Novolink's protection? Adrienne's voice was calm. I don't want protection. I want purpose. Valerie turned eyes sharp. And what about love? Do you think love will keep the lights on? Pay your team? Build your empire? Adrienne shook her head. No. But love will make it mean something. For the first time, Valerie didn't have an immediate comeback. Her lips parted then closed again. Her hands steady, precise hands trembled just slightly. Finally, she said, You sound just like your father. Adrienne froze. What? Valerie sighed, sitting back down. Her voice softened, not warm but human. He believed in people more than profit. It's why we divorced. I built this company to prove he was wrong. She looked at her daughter, and for once, there was no ice in her eyes, only exhaustion. Maybe he wasn't. The air in the room shifted, fragile as glass. Then Valerie looked at me. Take care of her, she said quietly. Because if you hurt her, there won't be a company or a city big enough for you to hide in. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something close to peace. Outside the building, Adrienne exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. That was not what I expected. I smiled. Honestly, me neither. She turned to me, the sunlight glinting in her hair. Do you think she'll ever understand? Maybe not, I said. But she doesn't have to. You do. Adrienne laughed softly and kissed me right there on the busy sidewalk. Cameras and pedestrians be damned. And for the first time, it wasn't about proving anything. It was just about us. A year passed. Then another. Pulse became a national platform featured in magazines, praised for its authenticity. We traveled to conferences, gave talks about empathy and innovation. The world began to know us not as the CEO's daughter and her girlfriend, but as Adrienne and Ivy, the women who built something that healed people. Our love changed too. It wasn't all passion and chaos anymore. It was quieter, stronger, the kind of love that folds laundry together, that leaves coffee on the counter before work, that holds you when the world feels too loud. But one night, something unexpected happened. We were invited to a tech gala, the same kind of event where we'd first pretended to be a couple. Felt poetic in a way. Full circle. As we entered the ballroom, heads turned. People whispered. Valerie Carter was there, of course regal as ever, surrounded by investors. When she saw us, her expression didn't change, but her eyes lingered a moment too long. Later in the evening, as Adrienne stepped away to take a call, Valerie approached me. She's happy, she said. She is. Valerie nodded slowly. I used to think happiness was a distraction, a weakness. She paused, her gaze distant. Maybe I was wrong. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest thing I'd ever get. I smiled gently. She learned from the best, even if she had to unlearn a few things first. For the first time, Valerie Carter, the woman who'd once terrified me, laughed. A small brittle sound but real. Take care of her, she said again, but this time her tone was softer. That night, as the gala lights dimmed and the city shimmered outside the windows, Adrienne found me standing alone by the balcony. Everything okay? She asked. I nodded. Your mom's surprisingly tolerable when she's not plotting my destruction. Adrienne laughed and wrapped her arms around me from behind. Maybe she's evolving. We watched the skyline together, silent for a long time. Then she whispered, Do you ever think about how weird it is that all this started because we were pretending? I smiled. Maybe that's how all real things start, pretending until the feelings catch up. She turned me around and kissed me, slow, deliberate, full of every promise we'd made and broken and remade again. And for the first time in a long, messy, beautiful journey, I realized we'd done it. We'd survived love in a world that didn't believe in it. Years later, when people asked how Pulse began, we never told them about the fake relationship or the corporate schemes. We told them it began with empathy, with two women who decided to stop pretending they were fine. But every once in a while, when interviews ended and the cameras were gone, Adrienne would lean over and whisper, Technically, it started because my mom wanted better PR. And I'd laugh until I cried. Because love, real love, is never clean or scripted. It's messy, inconvenient, sometimes impossible. But when it's real, it's worth every risk. One evening, years after everything, we stood again on that same rooftop garden where it all began, the fairy lights still glowing, the city still humming. Adrienne was holding a small velvet box. I stared at it, stunned. Are you serious? She grinned. You faked being my girlfriend once. I figured it's time we make it official. My heart stuttered. Adrienne, she opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the city's light. Ivy Hart, will you marry me? I couldn't even speak. Tears blurred the skyline and all I could do was nod over and over. When she slipped the ring onto my finger, the world seemed to slow down. The city, the noise, the lights, everything faded except her. And in that moment I realized something simple, something I should have known from the start. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories don't start with fate or fireworks. They start with a lie and end with the truth that changes everything. Epilogue. The next morning, the sun rose over the bay, painting our apartment in gold. Adrienne brewed coffee while I scrolled through my emails. One headline caught my eye. Former Novalink CEO Valerie Carter joins Pulse Advisory Board. I showed it to Adrienne. She read it then smiled. Guess some people really can change. I looked at her, the woman who taught me that love isn't about grand gestures, but quiet resilience, and I smiled back. Yeah, I said softly. Guess they can. She handed me a cup of coffee, our fingers brushing. The smell of roasted beans and rain filled the room. And as the city woke around us, I thought about every version of us, the fake couple, the rebels, the runaways, the dreamers. All of it had led us here. To this small kitchen, to this morning light, to this love that no longer needed to hide. Adrienne reached across the table, her voice gentle. Hey partner. Yeah. She grinned. Smile like you mean it. And I did. 'Cause this time everything was real. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.